Candidates, are you ready to begin? All right, Paul, at the end, why don't you begin with your introduction? 2 minutes.
Well, I drove past Al Bartlett's house on the way in here on 9th Street. I think just about everybody remembers that his yard always used to be full of yard signs this time of year for his candidates. Well, there was a yard sign that said minor subdivision street. That's kind of a metaphor for what I'd like to overdo. The recent decision of the present commissioners to designate land in the Twin Peaks area for a major low-income public housing project.
Paul, if you don't mind me interrupting you for a moment, can you speak up a bit? I think
I'll
it's
try.
hard for people to capture you back.
The recent decision by the present commissioners to designate land in the Twin Peaks area for a major low-income public housing project raises an inconvenient truth that has been ignored for years, and that is that Boulder County's environment and quality of life is being made to play second fiddle to an obsession with affordable housing. Twin Lakes' decision shows that affordable housing trumps environmental quality, neighborhood integrity, open space, and growth management. Essentially, the core concerns and values of Plan Boulder stood for since its inception. This isn't the first time this has happened. Affordable housing was used as a pretext for gutting Boulder's growth control regulations in the 28th 30th Street corridor. It turned the area into the most congested and least livable in the city, and is being used as a pretext for the ongoing attempts at backdoor densification of Boulder's low-density residential neighborhoods. It would be nice if we could have it all, but we can't. One of the definitions of tragedy is having to choose between equal goods. By that measure, the conflict between affordable housing and the environment may be a tragedy, but we still have to choose. And faced with that choice, I will choose the environment, and I hope you do too.
Perfectly timed. Thank you, Paul. Deb?
Well, thanks everybody for being here today. And I'm Deb Gardner. It's been a privilege to serve as one of your county commissioners since January of 2012. Being a county commissioner is without a doubt the hardest work I've ever done, but also the most rewarding because I've been able to fulfill my passion of helping people. Before becoming a commissioner, I served in the state legislature where I was able to develop relationships with many of the people I work with today. So when I need resources for flood recovery, child welfare, and others, I know who to call. Before that, I was an accountant for various companies in Boulder County. The skills I developed doing that work have been invaluable as I work through the budget process at Boulder County. I've also developed strong relationships with the business and banking community in Boulder County. The county is an active member in many of the local chambers and economic development organizations, and we're partners with the business community as we work through many issues, including transportation, flood recovery, and housing. I'm running for re-election and would appreciate your support to capitalize on the collaborative relationships and expertise I have developed over the past 4 years to build on the good work we have accomplished. We have some big issues before us: continued flood recovery, lack of affordable housing, and transitional housing for many people, and reducing the mitigating effects of climate change that tend to disproportionately affect our most vulnerable, just to name a few. I want to work hard on these issues as we work together to find solutions. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Deb. Elise?
Well, thank you to Plan Boulder for organizing this forum and to all of you for being here. My name is Elise Jones, and it's really been one of the great honors of my life to serve as your Boulder County Commissioner for the past 4 years. And during that time, I think we've really accomplished quite a few great things, and I want to mention a few of them. One, responding to the devastating September 2013 floods, rescuing people during the flood, getting them back on their feet, back in their homes, rebuilding our roads, restoring our creeks. 2, expanding our award-winning sustainability programs. I'm thinking perhaps of Energy Smart at the top of the list, which has already helped 14,000 homeowners and 3,800 business owners install water efficiency, energy efficiency, renewable energy to protect the environment and to bring down utility bills. 3, building a new St. Vrain Community Hub in Longmont, which really revolutionizes how we serve people in need as a one-stop shop. for completing the US 36 Managed Lanes project. Took us a while, but now we have a lane going each direction for the bus rapid transit, Flatiron Flyer service, for carpools and for toll-paying single occupancy vehicles, as well as a bikeway that goes all the way to Denver. Already, we're seeing great success in travel time savings, and increased bus ridership. Another is that we've created a coalition of cities and counties across the state who can advocate together at the state legislature for climate-friendly policies. This is the Colorado Communities for Climate Action. And we've safeguarded another 5,000 acres of open space for recreation, for wildlife, for agriculture. But the reason I'm running again is, despite all this good work, there is so much left to be done. As great as our county is, we have a number of really tough challenges we're facing. Affordable housing, climate change, transportation, oil and gas drilling, and the list goes on. And to tackle these issues, I really think that you need experienced leadership at the helm, commissioners who know the issues. So I'd appreciate your support.
Thank you. And Kevin.
My name is Kevin Sipple. I'll kind of tell about me because hardly anybody knows me. My background is in business. I was one of the founders of Eldorado Artesian Springs, which just happened to be kind of a good business experience for being a county commissioner. When we bought the business in '83, it came with all the roads and the water utility and all the hillsides, every parking spot in town, and just all kinds of the old resort, pretty much everything that you think of as being a city service in that town. And we've managed it all these years, in fact, still. I've had lots of volunteer experience in Boulder County from '92 to 2002. I was in an organization called the Placement Alternatives Commission. It's an appointed board position appointed by the county commissioners that managed 7 different social services programs that were designed to keep families together. And then from 2001 until currently, I've been a victim advocate with the Boulder Sheriff's Office, and I'm still doing that. And one of my regrets of doing this is if I win, I won't be able to be a victim advocate anymore, because there'll be a conflict of interest. But the reason I ran is because over the years, I started getting politically active in the 2012 election, just went to my precinct caucus, then ended up going to the county assembly and the state assemblies. And over the years, there's a lack of conservative candidates running. There's several issues which we'll talk about later, so there's no use getting into those kind of issues now. But I have a passion about saving money, and our county budget is kind of run away.
Great, thank you, Kevin. All right, now we're going to go into the questions part of the forum. Deb, you want to begin?
Questions too.
Just put up your hand and Alan back will come over and collect. And if you need a card, just signal over to Alan. So to remind you, you have 1 minute each for these, although you could exercise your 2-minute option if you're the beginner. So that would be you on this round, Deb. Here we go. So our first question is, what are the 3 biggest challenges currently facing Boulder County? Deb, you have 1 minute or 2 if you like.
I think I'll stick with one and see what happens. I think there's really 3 big issues. The top 3 for myself are, first, continued flood recovery. I know that many people feel like, well, we're done, we're past that, it's all over. But we've really only accomplished about half of the work that we need to do. We're still building permanent roads up and down the canyons, still putting in bridges to be able to get people home to their houses, and still helping people find housing. So there's a lot of work to do around that. We're really working hard in doing the work to make it more resilient, and we're going to have another discussion about that going forward. The next big thing is affordable housing. We have over 40,000 people in this community alone that are spending more than 50% of their incomes on housing. That's really an unsustainable way to go forward. And the third big thing for me, and I think it needs to be the lens that we think about all our decisions, and that's climate change. The effects, how do we mitigate, how do we make ourselves more resilient and more prepared going forward?
Great, thank you, Deb. Please, question to you.
All right, really fast. There's a lot of challenges. My top 3 would be climate change. I really think that's the urgent challenge of our generation. We know the future holds more extreme weather, more floods, more droughts, more wildfire. We just saw that with the Cold Springs fire. We really don't, inaction is not an option, and we really need to transition as quickly as we can to a clean energy future. 2 is affordable housing. As Deb mentioned, we have 40,000 people in this county that spend over half of their income for their house. And that is just not sustainable, and we need to work together to address that. We were just at the mid-point groundbreaking for the Kestrel development, what we're working on in Louisville, and it's going to be great, and we need to have more success stories like that. And 3rd is transportation. We need multimodal transportation options, bike, ped, eco-passes, so that we can get where we need to go.
Great, Kevin.
My 3 main issues. One would be fiscal responsibility, which is a typical buzzword, but our budget has kind of gotten out of hand. Just not even talking about past year's budget and how we've grown to get to the $426 million mark. That's the budget that was approved for 2016. Since the beginning of 2016, it's stretched to 474, and there's still a quarter of the year to go. What my other issue would be sort of like another buzzword, rule of law. There's some things going on that don't quite comply with the laws. Land use department has gone wild also. We've heard numerous complaints in this campaign about people's experiences. It takes 6 months to get a project through. It takes months even to get an appointment. And the final thing in the land use code, which has grown to be this tall now, it's grown. Okay, I'm out of time. Sorry.
All right, well, we're going to go over now to
Paul.
Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry, Paul. It's so far over there.
The biggest changes, the biggest challenges I think are having 2 more. There's the ability to face up to the consequences of growth and to make decisions and investments necessary for dealing with its consequences, of which roads and the inability to keep up with the explosion in traffic is probably the most obvious. Then there's the absence of a can-do attitude in county government, as evidenced by the dysfunctional county land use department, which has a waiting list to get on the waiting list. I'm not making this up. And the glacial pace involved in making even minor decisions. I call it death by process, and by its manipulation of public process to create manufactured consensus. And the 3rd one would be the rejection of science in the management of Boulder County's agricultural open space. I'm thinking here particularly of GMOs and the decision to ban drought-resistant crops and drought-resistant practices in the face of climate change, which I think makes a mockery of the claim that sustainability is a major issue for the present.
Thank you, Paul. Now we'll come over to the District 1 table to begin. At least you're going to begin on this question. The question is, are intergovernmental agreements between the county and various cities an effective way to prevent sprawl? Are all of the current signatories to these agreements willing to renew them? So kind of a double question. If you'd like me to repeat it, I'd be happy to.
Nope, I got it. So I would say yes, absolutely. Intergovernmental agreements or IGAs, it's a model that Boulder County has, and it should be replicated elsewhere. Boulder County has an IGA with every municipality in the county except Ward, where the municipality outlines its planning area, comparable to the City of Boulder's plan area 2. And the county protects open space and farmland outside that. And that IGA, those IGAs are bundled together in a super IGA that really guides land use in this county, so that we keep rural and protect open space for recreation and wildlife and agriculture, and development happens in the cities. Unfortunately, Erie and Lafayette pulled out of the IGA, and now they're involved in an annexation war along their border. So you have a clear, stark example of how it works in most parts of the county, but when people stop working together, how really you can get into some really bad land use changes.
Thanks, Elise. Kevin?
IGAs are a good thing. And as Elise said, we do have them with all the communities in the county. I actually have a little house in Ward. It is kind of a rebellious place. But it's the super IGA that was for 20 years. It started in 2003. It was supposed to be there was an option to pull out at at a 10-year mark, and I guess some of the communities have done it. Some of the communities think they need a larger share of sales taxes than they're getting, and that's one of the reasons why Erie is getting a third of the sales taxes of Lafayette, and they think they deserve more, and so there's always going to be those kind of conflicts. It's just human nature. It's still worth working on. And then there was one, I guess, that was attempted for the Gross Reservoir Expansion Project, and we don't have one with them because I guess the county couldn't come to agreement with the Denver Water Board, which isn't unusual.
Okay, over to District 2, Paul.
Come to think of it, Ward has probably had real success in controlling growth. No other city in the county has it. But I'm not sure there are enough junk cars for everybody to emulate their wise policies. Yes, intergovernmental agreements are a great way to control growth. But they require a lot of political maintenance and ongoing interaction and cooperation between the parties. And judging from the conflict between Lafayette and Erie, I get the sense the present commissioners haven't been interested in putting in the kind of necessary time and effort to really make that work.
Thank you. Deb?
Well, yes, I agree with my colleagues in that they are a very great tool. When you drive around the county, it's pretty easy to see the effects of it, the clear distinction between cities and open space. And Erie and Lafayette's decision to pull out of the IGA didn't mean that we weren't having great conversations with both of those cities. It was just Erie made a decision to pull out because of their self-interest around getting more sales tax. And we're in communication with all the cities around the county. We successfully redid the IGA with the city of Lyons in 2012, and we're in good cooperation with all the cities within the county. And while we can't predict exactly how the IGAs will go out going forward, the ones that are coming up, but I know that those negotiations will happen in a good way, and I expect that we'll be able to get them all renewed going forward.
Thank you, Deb. I should have reminded you to quiet your cell phones, put them on, although I like the Bowie ringtone. So our next question comes to you, Kevin. Beginning with you, how should the county prepare for future catastrophic floods, fires, and droughts?
Well, first of all, the catastrophic fires and floods. The county currently has some pots of money, commissioner's discretionary funds, and then just the general fund from which to get emergency funds like that. We've spent roughly $63 million on the flood so far, and apparently there's still half to go. But that would be a main thing. I would propose using other taxes, like possibly, well, we'll talk about that later too, but using other taxes for building an emergency fund that would cover something like that, at least until the federal and state governments could reimburse us. At which time I assign somebody to making sure we're getting reimbursed. So far we've been reimbursed about $23 million of the money we've spent so far on the fire and floods, and hopefully more to come. That's probably about all the time I have.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Paul?
Well, I proposed asking the voters to extend the present flood recovery tax and using it to create a natural disaster recovery fund. I think we should also adopt a broad strategy of adapting to climate change as opposed to trying to combat it in one city or one county. And the place to start with that is by ensuring that the water supply for the larger population is there in a warmer climate. And finally, I think that embracing genetically engineered drought-resistant corn and water-conserving agricultural processes like minimum-till agriculture made possible by Roundup Ready seeds should also be a central part of what we're doing.
Thank you, Paul. Deb?
Thanks. I think this is really the question of the day, is how do we make a more resilient community as we go forward? As we're rebuilding from the flood, we're working to be sure that the roads, the bridges, the houses, the people are more resilient going forward to withstand what we know will be the next disaster. We aren't sure exactly what it will be or when it will be, but we know we will have another one. And so there's the infrastructure piece, but then I think it's also really important that we be able to build stronger social connections in our community. There's great data out there that shows that communities that are more survivable during a disaster and recover faster, have those social connections, the connectivity between ourselves that are really the strong communities, and we're working on both those fronts. But at the end of the day, the reason we were able to bounce back real quickly from the previous flood was because we did have a reserve, and we're willing, and we're working to put that together now.
Thank you. Elise?
So certainly rebuild back the reserve that we had in our general fund so we can respond to future disasters. As Deb mentioned, as we're rebuilding from the 2013 floods, we're moving the roads away from the creeks. We're building in bigger culverts to withstand flood waters. We're buying out damaged properties in hazardous areas so we don't repeat the same destruction when the next flood comes. That helps with resiliency. Another thing is wildfire mitigation. We are very wildfire prone. We have in place a wildfire partners program that helps create defensible space and smart building structures for folks who live in the forests. Of the 20 homes that have participated in the wildfire partners program that were in the Cold Springs fire area, none of them burned down because of the fire mitigation and the standards that they met. We need to do more of that. And we need to continue moving people away from building anew in hazardous areas like fire-prone areas, floodways, and the like.
Thank you, Elise. Paul, this question's coming over to you. If the issue came before you on the Board of County Commissioners, would you vote to permit the Denver Water Board's plan to expand Gross Reservoir? Why or why not?
Well, you know, from where we are right now, I don't know the answer to that question because there's quite a bit of information that would go to it, but I would be leaning against it right now. And the reason is pretty obvious. If the dam fails, thousands could die. So I would approach the engineering reports very critically, especially knowing how the Denver Water Board has functioned in the past. The only thing that would give me pause on an outright no is the point you were addressing in the previous question, and that is if the expansion gave Boulder County a substantial opportunity to increase its water supply and secure it for a warmer climate, I would consider that. But that would have to be, getting there would be a pretty high bar given the problems that we've had with the Denver Water Board before, and really the size of the reservoir that would be behind that.
Thanks, Paul. Deb?
Well, it's really important because we're sitting on the current board to be able to present ourselves as having an open mind so that we're not having to recuse ourselves if this issue comes up before us. But I think it's been pretty clear in both the draft impact statements, thank you, and the actual impact statements. The comments that we made expressed concerns both that we had about the environmental impacts up there and the impacts that the people would have on the people up there, both during construction and post-construction. And I think that, so we didn't vote on the IGA, we voted no on the IGA with Denver Water that would have moved forward with the dam because of the environmental impacts again, and because there didn't feel like there was really any good benefit we would get from that. So we're really paying close attention to the issue, but again, couldn't make a definitive statement today.
Thank you, Deb. Elise?
So building on what Deb said, the comments that Boulder County made on the environmental impact statements were extremely critical of the EIS analysis because the analysis didn't actually lay out the case for why we needed that project, because water conservation measures have reduced demand in a lot of households, and Denver Water can be even doing more with efficiency. So the demand curves look different than what folks are proposing, and they haven't explained that. Also, virtually all of the impacts of the proposed dam expansion happen in Boulder County. None of the water from the project benefits us. So we don't have a lot of reasons to love that setup, and the EIS does not explain in any detail how the project would be designed, what, you know, the quarries, the mining, how many truck trips would be. They don't explain how they're going to do it, so we can't figure out what the impacts will be or how to mitigate them, and that's a huge problem in the EIS that we felt was never addressed.
Thank you, Elise. Kevin?
It is a hard issue to get your hands around. For one thing, the Denver Water Board is very strong in Colorado. The governor has already endorsed this project, and it would probably take years of legal battles to beat them, and then you probably wouldn't. The Denver Water Board is pretty powerful. There's other issues too. The issue about the dam breaking, I was at a study in 1997 about the current dam breaking at the current level. The water would be 110 feet deep at El Dorado Springs at the Bastille, that big cliff that's so famous. It would still be 10 feet deep in Erie. So it would be a major catastrophe if that thing broke. However, they said there's only two ways it would break. A volcano, these are strange ways, a volcano or a meteorite strike. They said no, even an atomic bomb wouldn't do it. Another issue in my mind is the weight of that much water. There's actually a geological principle that water pushes down on the earth so hard that it can cause earthquakes. And who knows what that might do. Okay.
Thank you. It's quite an image. Next question is coming to you, Deb, and it is another infrastructure question. What would you continue the county's current opposition to the expansion of the Eldora ski area into two riparian drainages?
I'm still trying to get my head around the meteorite. Well, this is a similar issue to the dam one in that we really can't state a position. And I'm pretty sure we haven't, I mean, we've had concerns but in our draft comments to the environmental impact statement, but we haven't, I don't think, outright opposed it. But there's a lot of concerns there, and I think there's concerns on both sides, both from an environmental standpoint and from a traffic standpoint, and concerns about whether there's a real need for it. Their statements had been around, we need to expand this for an economic reason, but at the same time, seem to be like there are infill options that would also meet that need, both from an economic standpoint and a user standpoint. So I think, but we are in conversations with both the ski resort and with the Forest Service and with other groups that are interested in what happens there and trying to work through the process and find a good solution.
Thanks, Deb. Elise?
Part of the resort's on public lands, part of it's on private. The part that's on private will go through the county for any permits, so that's the part we have to be careful on. In our comments on the Forest Service piece of it, we were very critical of the fact that they failed to analyze the obvious alternative, which is accomplishing the improvements inside the existing ski area boundary. And they didn't show why they couldn't do that, because if they could do that, then you would avoid the impacts in the Middle Boulder Creek watershed and the impacts out with Jenny Creek and the cross-country ski trails. And so we really felt that needed to be analyzed. And I say that as a season pass holder. I ski at Eldora. I recognize the need for improvements. But I think most of the improvements should, or all the improvements, have the opportunity to happen inside the existing boundary. I really think that needs to be looked at. But as Deb said, I think conversations continue on all sides with the environmental groups, the Forest Service, the resort, and so stay tuned.
Thank you, Elise. Kevin?
I was under the impression that the U.S. Forest Service has dealt with that and approved it under the condition that it stay within their current boundaries. And their current boundaries aren't just where the current resort sits, it's a little bit outside of there. But they actually approved a project where they would get add new lifts, build a few new buildings, which I guess would be the Boulder County's part of it. But there's 70 acres that were outside of the boundaries on the north and like 20 or 25 acres on the south. And those they have failed to approve. And their thinking was it will give time for the company to present their reasons why they should be able to expand there. Even staying within their boundaries, they're going to be able to add 188 acres of terrain, a bunch of glade skiing, a couple of buildings, and a new restaurant on top of one of the mountains. And so they're getting some of that. They're getting some of what they asked for from what I've read in the papers.
Thanks, Kevin. Paul?
Will I continue the county's opposition to the expansion of Eldora into two riparian drainages? Probably. I don't know the particulars of the issue with regard to the drainages, but I certainly have ongoing concerns about the expansion of Eldora, and they're left over from my previous service on the board. And they're about Red River Road, which was upgraded when I was there 20 years ago, could safely serve an expanded area without further major upgrading. that would require, I think, some environmentally destructive expansion of it. That would be my initial concern. But I'd certainly be very interested in hearing the question of the expansion for the riparian areas.
Thank you. I believe we're done with that question. Next question, going to you, Elise. Is the county government well managed, and how could it better be?
Well, you realize I bring a certain bias to that. Yeah, I think that Boulder County is well managed, and we have to work with county commissioners all over the state, so we do a pretty good job, but there is always room for improvement. I think places where we can improve is greater transparency and public engagement around our budgeting process. It's difficult, there's a lot of different funds, it's confusing. How do we engage the public in a way that they can understand and provide input? Nobody shows up at our budget hearings. We need to change that so we get more public input. We're revamping our website. There's a lot of information there. It's not always easy to understand, and it's not always easy to find it. So we need to do a better job there. And then finally, inclusivity. We need to continue to work to expand the diversity of folks serving on our boards and commissions, so we do really get input from the entire community.
Thanks, Elise. Kevin?
The management of the company, I think the priorities are just a little backwards. There's nothing wrong with trying to remove and reduce the amount of exhaust we breathe and this and that. But making global climate change our priority, I think, isn't quite right for a county commissioner. A county commissioner should be engaged in core services, fixing the roads and the bridges, doing land use and other such things. The land use department does need some changes. They've become very arrogant and weighty and pretty much abusive to the citizens of Boulder County. It's very hard to get a project through, and it costs a lot of money.
Thank you, Kevin. Paul?
No, it's not well managed, and an easy way to see that is in the tripling of the county budget in the last 20 years, while the population went up by a third. It used to be $150 million. It's $426 million today. I'm told it's really closer to 475 with some additional supplementals. That in itself speaks to the fact that there's a lot of room for improvement. And the good way to get that improvement, I think, would be to introduce lean management techniques, which engages the employees in wringing the inefficiency out of the system. It was tried in the county treasurer's office. It produced spectacular results there. It was tried very briefly in the land use department. It produced some spectacular results and was promptly abandoned. I could also see replacing the current don't do, won't do, can't do culture with a can do culture that can make a difference. In other words, an attitudinal change. And finally, I think eliminating the habit of kicking the can down the road on important decisions. It takes years to get important decisions and really not so important ones made.
Thank you, Paul. Deb?
Well, generally, I believe it is. I mean, I think one of the things that's unique about Boulder County is we don't have a county manager, which means all the department heads report directly to us. So we know what's happening on a day-to-day basis. We can give them direction. We can get input from them if there are any issues. And I think that makes us unique and more responsive to the public in general. I think one of the areas where we really could have more transparency is around, as Lee said, the budget process, but then the financial process in general. You're able to get all the information about our transactions on the website, but it's difficult to get it. And sometimes you need help from the budget or the finance department to know exactly what's happening. And so I think we're engaged in a process that's able to improve all that, and it will be transparent on the website, and that people can engage in that process more directly and see exactly what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And so I think that'll be very helpful to everyone.
Thank you, Deb. Kevin, this question's coming over to you. Should the county accept responsibility for maintaining the roads in county subdivisions? Why or why not?
I say yes for the issues that have actually been in the news lately. These particular subdivisions are old subdivisions, came to be in the 60s and 70s. They built the roads to county standards. The county accepted the roads and owned them and agreed to do the maintenance. they now will not want to do that maintenance. There's been court cases on it, and it's been decided that the county does own the roads, that there is enough money to fix them. There's enough money to fix them without cutting any other programs, especially in kind of our new larger budget things. We could put, you could put roads back into the general fund to 2 or 3% would be more money than we used to spend on it back when we were using 8% of the county budget. Some of the extra road taxes that are on our ballot are probably going to fail, like the 2% overall tax. And the answer is yes.
Thank you. All over to you.
The county has already accepted responsibility for maintaining the roads in county subdivisions. It formally accepted the responsibility after it required the roads to be built to county standards. The real issue is it should quit trying to welsh on the deal and do the work, and it should quit trying to pretend that it doesn't have the money to do it. And as for that recent tax proposal, I think it's very strange that the commissioners have decided to ask the voters to approve $75 million for repairing the roads in county subdivisions when a study is showing that it would take $25 million to do so. That suggests to me that this proposal was not brought forward in good faith.
Thank you, Paul. Deb?
Well, we wouldn't be here today if Paul had solved this problem back in 1995 when they said the roads should be taken by the county, but they didn't fund them. And so that's essentially the issue we are at today. We tried a public improvement district out to the voters and it failed. We've tried a local improvement district, but we were sued and lost that lawsuit. And then we were sued again and for not having enough money, using the money in our budget to spend on the roads. But turns out the courts have upheld that lawsuit. We've won that lawsuit as we've gone forward. It's in the Supreme Court right now. But the point is that despite the fact that we have a budget that is large, but it's large because we need money for flood recovery and other great programs that are happening within the county, but we cannot fund the roads without having additional money, and that's why I would support 1A.
Thank you. Please.
So as Deb pointed out, this issue is inherited from the commission that existed back in 1995, Paul Danish's commission, that decided, yeah, we'll maintain the roads, but we're not going to pay to reconstruct them, repave them. That's the issue. And so he kicked the can down the road and for a decade did nothing to figure out how to fund this. We inherited this solution. We've tried, or this problem, we've tried multiple solutions, a local improvement district, public improvement district. Now we're trying another solution, issue 1A, that was brought to us by a group of subdivision residents to see if the county taxpayers would be willing to accept a modest property tax increase that would provide funding to repave all of the subdivision roads over a 15-year period and provide additional funds to the cities for their transportation priorities as well. It amounts to a tax of about $6.25 per $100,000 of assessed value. So we're going to try this solution. It would be great if it would pass. We think it's fair and equitable, and it would solve this problem that unfortunately we had to inherit from the prior commission.
Thank you, Elise. I just wanted to remind everyone that if you have questions, just ask Alan for a card. She's in the back. Fill it out and give it back to her. And we'll be ready to go when we get to our questions section in about 20 minutes or so. Our next question goes to you, Paul. Should the 20 acres adjoining the Twin Lakes open space be annexed to the city of Boulder and used for public housing? Why or why not? If you favor public housing there, how dense should it be?
Well, it's hard to think of a worse place to build a public housing project. It would be environmentally destructive and to the piece of the single most used piece of county open space. It would be socially destructive as well by ghettoizing the residents in an isolated public housing project. The project should be jumped immediately. Boulder County's public housing projects should be in the form of small projects dispersed throughout the community so the residents can be integrated into the broader community. That's what they used to be. I look at this project as more empire building within the housing authority than anything else, and it certainly isn't a good solution for Boulder County in handling affordability in housing.
Thank you, Paul. Deb?
Well, I was one of 3 votes on Tuesday that voted to change the Boulder Comprehensive Plan for these 20 acres to medium density development. That designation would allow for 6 to 14 units per acre for the Housing Authority, but they've already committed to 12. Those vacant lots have been in Area 2 for over 30 years and slated for development. There are, as we said before, there are 40,000 people in this county that need help in supporting their housing. The need for affordable housing is clear. There is not going to be solved by the market, and the only solution is to build more affordable housing. As Elise said, we were this morning up in Louisville at the midpoint of the Kestrel development, and it's those kinds of developments within the county that are going to be able to solve the solution of affordable housing for our community.
Thank you, Deb. Elise?
So, as was said, I voted to support this. I understand people don't like development, but we have an affordable housing crisis, and where should we actually build places for our school teachers and for our low-income families to live? Probably an Area 2 parcel that's surrounded on 3 sides by development and has been slated for annexation and development for 35 years. There are nice vacant fields. They are not open space. And if we work with the school district and the housing authority, we can create a beautiful development similar to what we've done at Josephine Commons, Aspen Mall, Kestrel, that has community gardens, wildlife corridors, wildlife buffers, and will be an amenity to that area. And the school district and the housing authority have already committed to limiting development at 6 to 12 units an acre and committing to a wildlife corridor and wildlife buffers. It seems like a reasonable compromise.
Thank you, Elise. Over to you, Kevin.
I believe it's not the right place for a development like this, and I'm not opposed to affordable housing, but there's far better places for it, like just 2 miles up the road at the Gun Barrel Business Center, where there's already numerous large lots that aren't, the high water table, those lots are virtually a swamp. It'll cost an extra $500,000 just to build a set of buildings in there, maybe more. The roads that feed those 2 lots are inadequate, they're narrow and curvy, and they couldn't take 2,000 more traffic trips a day, or whatever it would be. I've been told some estimates are even higher than that. The lots at the Gun Barrel Business Center are already surrounded by stores and businesses and jobs and doctor's offices and all the services a community would need. The bus, the public transportation that goes in there is a quarter mile or 3/4 of a mile away. The Kestrel development is really nice and it's in the right spot. That kind of development is what we need, but not in the middle of a swamp in a single-family housing development.
Thank you, Deb. Deb, next question coming to you. Do you favor EcoPass to cover all of Boulder County? If so, how should it be financed? If so, should it cover residents, workers, or both?
I'm in favor of a countywide EcoPass, and I believe it should cover both residents as well as workers. It has been documented that people are 9 times more likely to take the bus if they have an EcoPass in their pocket. Given that there are tens of thousands of people commuting into Boulder County every day for work, it only makes sense to include workers as well. Enabling and encouraging alternate modes of transportation, not building more and bigger roads for more automobile traffic. There's been a task force that worked over a year that included businesses and governments and neighborhoods and nonprofits working together to figure out the financing problem. And it's very, very complicated because money is already being contributed from various sources, but how do you make a countywide source that's equitable? The RTD is not a very good player in this conversation. EcoPass is not one of their favorite things. But what we've been going forward of being good to have local EcoPasses both in Nederland, Lafayette, it's on their ballot. Right now we have Ride-Free Longmont.
Thanks, Deb. Elise?
Absolutely, it's so important. By increasing transit use, we can decrease, greenhouse gas emissions and reduce congestion. We have already piloted the use of community EcoPass in Nederland and Lyons, now in Ride-Free Longmont, where the buses are free. In all of those places, it's been wildly successful. In Longmont, we've tripled bus ridership, and a lot of those riders are low-income folks who don't have access to cars, so it's a huge benefit. We have not been able to put something on the ballot to figure out how to fund something that would work for both residents and workers. The polling wasn't particularly good this year, and RTD is not willing to partner with us yet. So we are instead moving forward with supporting Lafayette's issue 2C on the ballot. They're doing a modest property tax increase so that they can provide Eco Passes to all their residents. So we want to keep moving forward, community by community, until we can get everybody in the county an Eco Pass. And I think it will revolutionize how we travel in our county.
Thanks, Elise. Kevin?
I do believe that they're a good idea with limitations. They shouldn't be just free to everyone. There has to be some sort of a responsibility on paying for that sort of stuff. There might be a sliding scale so that people who really are very low income don't have to pay or don't have to pay much. Someone who just is doing it because they think it's their civic responsibility, they can afford to pay and should. The taxpayers of everyone shouldn't have to pay for those. Another thing is about cars and roads. Over and over again, we found that people love their cars. We're all Americans. I love my car. There are good kinds of cars that don't pollute as much. I have a hybrid car. One of the other commissioners has an electric car. Those are very good things to do. And we need to keep our roads on top of it and even improve them so that they might be set up for the self-driving cars and all that in the future.
Thank you.
Well, there are 250,000 cars in Boulder County and growing, and I think that tells you something about where the people voted with their wheels in terms of how they want to get around. The answer is no, I don't support a county-financed program that gives equal passes to everybody in Boulder County. RTD doesn't provide enough service to justify that sort of a public subsidy. I'm willing to subsidize the passes for the poor, but not to commit to subsidize a system that is not a meaningful transportation alternative to the overwhelming majority of Boulder County residents. And the truth is, you would probably get more bang for your buck if you subsidize trips by Uber and Lyft.
By what?
Uber and Lyft.
Thank you, Paul. Elise, you got the next question. Do you support continuing the energy conservation elements in the county's building code? Why or why not?
Absolutely. Nearly half of all the greenhouse gas emissions in the county come from commercial and residential buildings, so it's absolutely essential that we increase efficiency. Build Smart is the county's residential green building program. It's been in place since 2008. It's sort of state-of-the-art and in terms of encouraging new development to be as green as it can be. And this applies to all new residential development as well as additions. So our last update to the code was in 2015, where we said that it used to be that 6,000 square foot homes had to be net zero energy. We dropped that to 5,000 square foot homes have to be net zero energy because we have a goal to have all new residential construction be net zero energy by 2022. And so we're really pushing people hard, and we have the Energy Smart program to help work with existing homes and helping homeowners retrofit their homes with insulation and the like to help save money on their utility bills.
Thank you, Elise. Kevin?
The answer would be yes in some aspects of it, but only to a point. The reuse of building materials is a good idea just to keep it out of the landfill. Some of the things have gotten a little bit overbearing, like for one thing, there's hardly any 5,000 square foot houses being allowed by land use to go up anymore, especially out of the county. There's development credits that they have to pay just to be able to build a large house like that, kind of like a county currency, which is really just a tax. But you have to buy a $4,500 to $7,500 building credit even to build a house that big. There's some of the issues in there is by forcing people to do some of these energy conserving things that get really expensive, that can increase the price of a house by $50,000. Just for one example, there was a gentleman I talked to at one of the campaign events who was building a house, and he's been forced to put in a electric car charger in his garage, even though he doesn't have an electric car. And someone might someday there, but he doesn't.
Thanks. Paul, over to you.
Believe it or not, the Boulder County Building Code isn't my bedtime reading, so I can't comment on the particulars there. But I do support the principle of incorporating energy conservation elements into building codes for reasons of national security, for natural disaster resistance, and for climate change adaptation.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, over to you.
So yes, I'm in support of the county's Build Smart regulations. They really create a model for energy efficiency and for moving to the use of more renewables. It furthers the goals of the Colorado Climate Action Plan and the county's Sustainability Energy Plan. It encourages high-performing, sustainable redevelopment and development for residences. It also creates energy-efficient structures that reduce production of greenhouse gases and the amount of material sent to landfills. It conserves water and other natural resources, and used in the building process, it ensures indoor air quality. The whole concept of being able to adapt to climate change and being able to mitigate the effect of climate change by having the reduction in greenhouse gases is so important, and these regulations contribute to that.
Thanks, Deb. Elise?
I already answered.
Oh, I'm sorry. Our next question goes over to you, Paul, which is, should the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan include a policy that the net number of affordable housing units may not be reduced as a result of development or redevelopment?
I'm open to the idea in principle, but I think this is an area where the devil could really be in the details. And just one that occurred to me almost immediately was you really have to take care to ensure that a policy like this doesn't kill off investment in existing subdivisions and lead to essentially their deterioration because people aren't willing to follow through and developers aren't willing to follow through and rebuild areas that need to be rebuilt. But generally, I think the idea has a lot to commend it, and I think if it's done carefully, it could be a plus.
Great. Okay.
Well, I thought it was an interesting idea, but it doesn't really get to the heart of the problem. It would, it would stop the 400 to 500 units per year loss that we're having in affordable housing, which that would be a good thing. But at the same time, it doesn't really address the, again, as we've talked about, the 40,000 individuals that are spending over 50% of their income on housing. And so we need to, in addition to a move like that, we need to work on how do we have a regional solution to our affordable housing crisis. And I think that working together with all the affordable housing authorities is the best solution that we can come up with, and that we continue as a county to do land banking and also being able to have a long-term vision about how do we get to a place where we have a sustainable housing market, and we don't have that now.
Thanks, Deb. Elise?
It is an intriguing idea. It's probably more relevant to cities than the county. We don't actually approve massive redevelopments or new developments of subdivisions at all. So it's not where most of the development is occurring. That having been said, I was recently tapped to serve on the Smarter Cities Challenge Task Force, which is a region-wide effort to deal with homelessness and figure out affordable housing for that particular population, and preservation of existing affordable units is high on that list. So we do need to deal with it. But as to Deb's point, we also need to figure out how to add to affordable housing stock. And we just heard in Twin Lakes where people would say, I'm all for affordable housing, but just not here. And every single conversation you have anywhere in the county tends to be, yeah, we want it somewhere else. Well, where is somewhere else? We actually have to figure out where it's suitable to build and have that conversation. And having just gone through this, I think we need to search our souls to figure that one out.
Thank you. Kevin?
I think the county should not adopt such a policy. It strikes me as more along the lines of progressive thinking, social engineering than actual anything else. The city, there can be incentives, tax incentives for builders to build low-income housing, like this Kestrel development in Louisville. It's in the right place, and this proposal in Twin Lakes really is in the wrong place. If anyone ever drove out there and saw it, it's also ground zero for some of the road maintenance issues, and their roads are some of the worst ones around, even though there's plenty of those. But so I think the answer is no. It's not government, especially county commissioners' duty to re-engineer the population of our country or community.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, I believe I skipped you as a first goer in the last round.
That's okay.
So, this is so much information, so compact, and coming at you so fast. My mind is like, mine too. So in 3 minutes, we're going to make this our last question. We're going to go back, we're going to go to our questions. So this is a chance for you to, this is a chance for you to submit a question. So if you have any questions that have come up, ask Alan to come over before I take the stack. You can get your question in raised. So, Kevin, the last question is, should the county adopt a policy that the majority, hold on, I'm sorry.
Want me to comment now?
Oh, I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm feeling overwhelmed by information, but go for it. Sorry, Paul.
The answer is no, and the reason is that the affordable owner-occupied housing does have one important downside, and that is it limits the owner's ability to accumulate equity and limits their mobility, among other things. I grew up in a housing project that had permanently affordable clauses in their titles. It was a mile-high housing project in Denver that was created by Byron Johnson, who was one of the original members. The members kept it going for a long time, but they eventually dropped it as they aged. One problem, and then there was an unforeseen consequence too, and that was because of the inability to acquire equity, to accumulate equity, it was very hard to find buyers when you wanted to move. So, no, it's a good idea in theory. In practice, it's got some real problems to it.
Thank you, Paul. Kevin, coming back to you.
Are we on question number 12?
I believe we are.
Okay, should the county adopt a policy that the majority of new residential development in unincorporated areas be permanently affordable for middle and low-income residents? And it's sort of similar to the last question. I'd say the answer is no to that. The first thing that struck me is that's going back to the feudal system, where the good people can live in the Emerald City, and all the serfs have to live outside of the gates, out around it. It's almost a ridiculous idea, and actually it is a ridiculous idea. You can never say every house that's developed in our county, except in Boulder, where the cities, is going to be low income. It would be crazy to even try, in my opinion.
So then I'll jump in. Again, this is one of those policies that has some merit, but it's really more appropriate for the city, not the county. Most of the county is zoned agriculture or forestry, and we do agricultural buildings or maybe a single family home here and there. We don't do any new subdivision.
1 and 2 houses, but that's a model that really works for Habitat for Humanity. And there are other organizations that can do that 1 and 2 and 3 development. The biggest one now, I think, that ever happened is going to happen in Boulder and in Longmont.
Thank you. Paul, I believe you addressed this question. Would you agree?
Yeah, he started it
Yes,
up.
I did.
Okay,
Yes.
good. All right. Whew. I feel like it's back in the classroom, one of these intensive lectures, and everyone sort of staggers out of the room.
There's going to be a short quiz.
There will be a test on this material.
Speed date.
So now we've got some questions. So we're going to lighten it up, and we're going to vary it and have some questions that the panelists haven't seen before. So totally different dynamic begins now. So let's see. Let's start this question. Kevin, would you be comfortable being the lead off? Okay, this question comes in 2 flavors. So for challengers, and that's your question, let's see if I need to say the questions. Well, I'll say both sides of the question. So for incumbents, in announcing your selection for Director of Parks and Open Space, you indicated you would bring a change in direction. What does this mean to you? And for challengers, what directions do you advocate for the county's Park and Open Space Department? So Kevin, why don't you begin? You have 1 minute.
Okay, one of the main things that comes to mind is agriculture. The Boulder County Open Space owns 25,000 roughly acres of agricultural properties. A lot of them are leased back to the farmers that have been on them forever, for generations. Some of them are new. They're actually trying to instigate more organic farms, which is a fine idea. They often don't last. They're having trouble making it. The county spends a lot of time taking care of them, buying fences, water features, water rights, just kind of taking care of them. The county agriculture department takes really good care of all the farmers, and they all appreciate them, and they really do care for the farmers. We're running out of farmers. In 15 years, there's going to be very big shortage of them. We should be taking care of both kinds of farmers, traditional agriculture and organic, and giving equal financial incentives to both.
Thanks, Kevin. Paul, over to you.
Well, with the growth in population, there's been many more requests and much more pressure for open access to county open space and for using it for recreational purposes. And that means that lands that we were treating almost as wilderness now can't be treated that way anymore. They will have to be opened up more, and that requires more trails and more maintenance, so you're treating them more like parklands, and that's a much more expensive proposition. That's why I favor the continuation of the open space tax, which is about to run out at the end of 2019. We used half of it, and to put half of that earmarked for maintenance. Then there's the issue, the broader issue of how do you handle agricultural lands, and I think let's get right to the point here. I agree with 110 Nobel laureates who recently characterized Greenpeace's war, and by extension Boulder County's war on genetically modified crops, as a crime against humanity. If elected, I will immediately move to repeal the ban and embrace state-of-the-art scientific agriculture for the management of Boulder County open space. Commissioner Gardner claims her vote on this matter wasn't against GMOs per se, but against pesticide use, and that is rather remarkable considering
Paul, you
the
need to
reason
wrap up.
I'm about that finished in about one more sentence. In this context, it's worth noticing that American farmers have embraced GMO crops to reduce pesticide use, and in fact they did by about 600 million pounds per year.
Thank you. Deb, you have 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Thank you. It's, whenever you have an organizational change, it's an opportunity to really bring in some new thinking and new information and new energy, I think. And the population, as people have said, is changing, and I think we do need to have a new emphasis on our aging population, another emphasis on how do we really create having places in our parks and open space that are more inclusive to everyone. We have a tendency to have people that are in this room be the people that use parks and open space, but I think we can be more diverse and more broad in how we invite people into using the parks and open space. And also, I think there will be additional acquisitions that have to happen, but that will be reduced over time, and that maintenance will become a more important part of what we're doing. And we put together a 2020 vision plan for where Parks and Open Space is going to be going, and a big piece of that is how do we work on climate adaptation within the office and within the department, and what does that look like in terms of mitigation and in terms of possibly more carbon sequestration on our agricultural lands and other ways to.
Thank you, Deb. Elise?
Well, I agree with everything Deb said, and building on that, I mean, Ron Stewart was the director for 17 years, and he did a fantastic job. So we're entering a new chapter where we have the opportunity to bring in somebody new to have a fresh perspective and enable an examination of how do we do things and how can we do them better. And some of the opportunities, I think, there, as Mr. Danish pointed out, changing demographics. We have greater demands for access on our open space. How do we accommodate that while still protecting the wildlife and the sensitive ecosystems? How can that desire for regional trail connections be implemented through more acquisitions that can also protect sensitive landscapes and provide access? Those are some conversations we can have. We can start having relationships with other jurisdictions and partnering with them in new ways. I think that's an exciting opportunity. And Eric Lane, who's the new director that we hired, has a background in agriculture, and I think he can help lead the conversation about how Boulder County can work with our farmers to be a national leader in sustainable agriculture using the best techniques that don't rely on pesticides in order to produce local food.
Thank you, Elise. Paul, this question's coming over to you. Is it ethical for the developer applicant to also be the approval body? Is a public developer different than a private developer in this regard?
Well, that raises a really interesting question, that that's the quote from Alice in Wonderland, I'll be judge, I'll be jury, said the cunning old fury, I'll try the whole case and condemn him to death. It's a problem. I don't know if it's on its face unethical, but it certainly creates problems. And I think when you get an issue as contentious, and this is a question that is in the context of the Twin Lakes development and the housing authority, I think that perhaps it's time that maybe it is time for a different sort of recusal that we have, that somebody that gets to be a third party and not be someone be making decisions rather than having the housing authority be reviewed by the same body that changes its seats and becomes a review body.
Thank you, Paul. Deb?
Well, I mean, obviously, that was a question that came up during the Twin Lakes debate around the four-body review. And a couple of things. One, I had a very clear advice from our attorneys that gave both the statutory reasoning for why it was not unethical or illegal to have us be sitting as both bodies, but then also that there isn't any internal personnel reason. There was an accusation that our boards and commissions can't serve in that way and you can't be both, but that wasn't the case in this because the personnel doesn't apply to the boards and commissions that we were sitting as the housing authority. So I think that it's really important that we be open and transparent in everything we do, and I think we were. And so stand by the fact that I think we can be both of those at the same time.
Thanks, Deb. Elise?
Just building on that, legally, it is perfectly legit for Board of County Commissioners to also head up the housing authority. It's done before and it happens in other circumstances. I hear from people who say, it's legal, ethical, but it doesn't feel right, and I hear that. In our role, we were going through a four-body process that requires all four bodies to act, and it doesn't move forward without approval. So if we'd have pulled ourselves out in the middle of the process, it wouldn't have gone forward. So it felt like we needed to move forward in our role as the county commissioners there and be really clear about why we felt our decision was based on the comp plan. The second half of your question about whether or not there's a difference between a public developer and a private developer, not necessarily in that situation, but in general, yes, often the city of Boulder will look at an annexation, which would come out of that. What's the public benefit? And 100% permanently affordable housing is a huge public benefit, and that's what you get out of a public sector development.
Thanks, Elise. Kevin?
The Board of County Commissioners is also the board of many other entities around the county. They're even the board of the El Dorado Springs Sewer District. So that is a common thing for them to do. Some of the things that would alarm, I guess might be the word, or annoy me more, was some of the reports that were in the papers that they had been influencing some of the land use employees to actually write letters to the editor and go speak at the hearings. And some of the employees were actually complaining to apparently ethics boards about that. And that seems to be a little bit more wrong for a conflict of interest. So, and naturally, I'm biased against that particular project we're talking about, but so that, I guess, would be my answer.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. So Deb, this one comes to you. It's another one of these ethical kind of core values, core issues questions. How do you intend to mitigate the fundamental core causes of unaffordable housing? And to be clear, what are these, in your opinion?
Well, I think the core issue is how do people be able to have self-sufficiency in their life, where that's reducing the effects of poverty. How do you lift people up out of poverty and get them to the point of self-sufficiency? And our Human Services Department has, in partnership with all the nonprofits within this community, have been very successful in creating a community of hope that looks at all the social determinants of well-being and being able to work to help people lift themselves up and give them all the tools and the support they need, and really moving the money to the prevention intervention side of the equation rather than helping people when they're in crisis, helping them when they're at the point of being before they fall into crisis, and so that it's a better investment in their better overall health and we're more successful.
Thanks, Deb. Elise?
I do think that it is better for our society, and I also think it's moral for us to make sure that we have a safety net in place that not only lifts people up when they're down, but helps break the cycle of poverty so that they can be self-sufficient and contributing members of society. And as Deb pointed out, we do have a human services department that does the Housing and Human Services and Community Service Department that really work well at doing that. I think the other pieces of it are looking at, say, transportation. That's usually the second highest cost. How do we make our transportation systems more affordable to everyone? How do we have connections, transportation connections between home and work so that everybody can move more? There's different pieces of this that we can all work on. Another aspect is making sure that the county pays a livable wage to all of our employees so that they have an opportunity to be self-sufficient. So I think there's many components to that question.
Kevin?
Okay, some of the core causes of need for affordable housing are things like lack of jobs, which doesn't really seem to be happening in Boulder County right now. Our economy is doing pretty well these days, especially here. There's the transportation issue for low-income people. There actually is a gap in services between cities. There are a couple of buses here and there, but it's actually really hard for people to commute between cities right now, especially in cities that might not even be in Boulder County, like Brighton or Frederick, Firestone, and Decono, and places like that, which there isn't much public transportation. Another big issue we have here in Boulder County, it comes and goes over time, and it's come now, is the homeless issue. Our mountains are full of young people who have come to Colorado for the glory light or for jobs in the pot industry or for whatever reason they come, but they need to be taken care of. They're a younger, more mentally ill group right now, and that's my time.
Thanks, Kevin. Paul?
Well, let's face up to what perhaps the most inconvenient truth of all is. You're right, the reason that real estate prices are so high in Boulder County is that for the last 50 years we have tried very, very hard to protect and improve our environment, and we have succeeded in doing so. The result of that is lots and lots of people want to live here and businesses want to locate here. Good. I spent a lot of my life being accused of making housing unaffordable. What the hell do you want me to do? Run down the property values? Look, there is only so much government can do in this. If 40,000 people are paying 50% of their income, do you seriously think there is anything that Boulder County can do to solve that problem except nibble around the edges of it? The best solution, obviously, is for people to get higher wages. It's also worth noting that this is a problem which is reasonable. Housing prices are exploding in Denver, in Jefferson County, in just about every place in Boulder County, in the Denver metropolitan region. We do not have a total solution for this, but let's at least be honest enough to know what caused the problem, and that the proposals that we've heard here today are really nibbling around the edges of it.
Thank you, Paul. Elise, this question's coming to you. It's a reference to the Rocky Flats region. There's a fundamental environmental action in our region. Why did the Boulder County Commissioners approve to spend $200,000 to connect the contaminated Rocky Flats trails to our trails? Plutonium is still in the site, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it will be spread to Boulder. And are other alternatives better and cheaper?
So, great question. On one hand, regional trail connections are something that people want to see, and the idea of connecting the Rocky Mountain Greenway from down in Denver all the way up to Rocky Mountain National Park is exciting, and people want to be able to recreate and travel in that way. But we conditioned our support on soil sampling that proved that there wasn't any danger to anyone using a trail, and we also required that they look at an alternative trail alignment that would allow, for example, people biking to go around the contamination area in Rocky Flats. So if they chose not to go through that, then they would have another travel option, recognizing the fact that it's important that we protect public health. And that's why we made our support contingent on that guarantee.
Thanks, Elise. Kevin?
I'm not that familiar with all the ins and outs like Elise's, but I do remember the study that was done about 20 years ago in Rocky Flats when they were decommissioning it. And the pollution plumes definitely did go straight east. They went out into Stanley Lake, into Broomfield and Arvada, and those people actually did have more of the radioactive elements in their water. There's one that actually came from manufacturing that I honestly can't think of the name of right now, tritium. And they definitely did find it there. It didn't beat, at least according to the tests they published, the limits, the FDA and EPA limits on it, but it was there. So I'm always, I would be concerned about radioactive contamination. However, by now, it's been 20 years since they've really been doing it. There may be some deep pools of radioactive ponds there, but it's mostly buried now.
Thank you, Kevin. Paul?
I was on the Rocky Flats Coalition of Local Governments and Boulder County's representative when the cleanup was going on. I never felt the job was done correctly. About a week before the cleanup was over, somebody was driving around one of the old landfills Geiger counter, and they discovered, lo and behold, tritium was leaking out of it. And it's a hearing I remember very vividly because I asked the government employee who was there to explain how this happened, and I've never been in a public hearing like this before. He stood there mute as I asked direct question after direct question after direct question. That really tells you everything you need to know about Rocky Flats. The cleanup was perhaps done the best that human beings can do, but it was not complete. The best thing to do with Rocky Flats is treat it as a wildlife refuge and leave the critters there and keep people off it.
Thank you. Deb?
Well, I currently sit on the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council and have been on it for the last 4.5 years. And I think one of the most frustrating things is that when questions are asked of the Department of Energy about what's happening there, or could we be doing additional testing right now, either testing of the water, testing of the soil, testing of the dust, testing of the air quality, then the answer is no, we're already doing everything we need to be doing, and that should be sufficient. And I know that members of the public and members of that board are concerned that we're not getting all the information, particularly current information, that we could be getting. And so that's why the board, the commissioners for the Boulder County and the surrounding jurisdictions voted to move forward with this contingent flap grant so that we'd actually have the opportunity to study the things we've been wanting to study, which is the air quality, the soil, and the water quality in a way that hasn't happened before. And
Great. All right. Thank you, Deb. Before we finish, Alan has an announcement.
Quick announcement. We're going to have another forum next week, same time, same place. Though it's going to be shorter, it's just going to be a one-issue forum on the term limit initiative on the ballot, and Richard Valenti will be Raleigh East's AA will be opposing term limits, and somebody from Open Boulder is going to be proposing them. So that's the announcement. Hope you can all attend.
Well, that was an amazing amount of detail. These are unlike some other candidates we know. These candidates really know how to prepare. So I'd like to thank Glen Boulder County for organizing this great event.
Closing statements?
Oh, we have time for 1 minute closing statements. So let's see, where are we at? I think in our sequence, where should we begin? Do we have a volunteer?
I'm happy to volunteer.
Elise, volunteer.
Thank you all for being here. It was great. I think you all know me, and my background as an environmental advocate. In my 13 years as director of Colorado Environmental Coalition, where I've had the opportunity to work pretty closely with Plan Boulder. I want to take this time to put in a plug for 2 county initiatives. 1B, which is an extension of our big open space tax to allow half of that to continue to be used and to be bonded forward to do acquisition and management of open space. And 1C, which would take the other half of that money and allow it to be used on sustainability programs like energy efficiency and renewables and water conservation and local food, zero waste. They are 2 important functions that the county does that are near and dear to all of our hearts. And we can invest in both of those without raising taxes. So please join me in supporting 1B and 1C.
Thank you, Elise. Kevin, 1 minute.
Okay, I'm going to try and talk fast. I'm going to try and squeeze a couple more issues in instead of just the traditional ending statement, because they didn't come up. Along the lines of core services, our sheriff's department needs some attention. The jail is holding twice as many people as it should. The staff is in danger. The staff is overworked. We need to devote some more resources to them, no matter who gets elected. The GMOs, the use of pesticides. There's 10 pesticides approved by the USDA for GMO crops, and some of them are more dangerous to groundwater and pollinators and such than the synthetic ones that are being mostly complained about. Our environment. If anybody's been around here a long time, since 1971, you remember there was a brown smog cloud over the whole Front Range every single day, summer and winter. In winter it was thicker because people used more fireplaces. It's not that way anymore. There's no smokestacks blowing smoke out of public service out here all day long and even more at night. And so things are getting better there. And I would say yes on extending 1B, no on the sustainability tax, and no on Proposition 69, or that Colorado payers thing.
Thank you, Kevin. Paul.
Well, I would oppose the extension of the sustainability tax. That tax would take $100 million, should be used on core services, and put them into things like recycling and composting. Now, those are admirable things, but maintaining a road network, which the economy depends, and doing something about a real crisis in the county jail are probably more important. I'm sorry, the roads are more important than the compost. Beyond that, I would like to say we're about to go into an election where I think probably most of us are feeling pretty rotten about it because of the national dialogue, which has been very polarized and very ugly. I think it's important as we go into this election to remember that the secret sauce that makes the United States work, it's not found in the Constitution, and it's really not found in the Declaration, is the concept of the royal opposition, which is to say that we're not at war with each other as a people, but we're all partners in making democracy live. If I'm elected, that is going to be a guiding light for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Deb.
Well, my ties to the community are strong and deep. I've always had a reputation as someone who shows up, who listens and works hard to solve the problems we're facing and solve them together. Others know and respect me as well for my ability to get stuff done and to help those in need in our community. If you go to my website, debgardner.net, you'll see the organizations, elected officials, and community activists that know and support me in my bid for re-election. As I've said before, this is hard work. We're constantly trying to balance competing interests with limited resources, but I've proven my ability to work towards solutions. I have the experience and compassion and collaborative spirit to be effective in this work. As Elise said, I'd also like to say I support 1B and 1C. I think both of those ballot initiatives without raising taxes will give us a lot of ability to both help our open space and to be able to work on our sustainability issues. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Ted. So that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for coming today to the Plan Fulton County's Forum, and especially thank the candidates.